So today's video, I want to discuss something that I find interesting. It may be kind of odd, but maybe some of you guys can relate to this. So this was prompted due to an email exchange that I had with an individual who bought something from me off of my website, madlittlepixelshop.com. Yeah, shameless self-promotion, but that's what prompted it. So I sold something that I didn't need. I sell things on that website all the time, keep things rotating. It helps me out a lot to, get rid of things that I no longer need, to be able to buy things to use for the channel, or just to fill in the gaps. Like this year's been kind of weird with YouTube. Views have been okay, but it's been one of the worst years for me as far as ad revenue. I don't know how to explain it. It's just been bad, but it helps fill in the gaps. So it works. It's cool. Helps me out greatly. But I sold something I no longer needed, and this individual emailed me like, hey, I didn't even know this existed. Awesome. Now I'm be able to use this item, right? And I was like, I emailed him back, like, glad it's going to somebody who's going to be able to use it. Like, I bought it thinking I was going to be able to use it. It showed up too late, and I no longer needed it. So cool, right? I'm not going to say this guy's name, but if he wants to comment, cool, expand on things if he wants. But I'll read part of what he said that prompted this discussion, and I could relate to big time. So he said, you are smart to sell things and keep the collection rotating. I have a severe OCD and fear of missing out issue with this stuff, and it causes me to hang on to things that I shouldn't. Does anyone need 4 pockets, 4 duos, 4 retro tinks? Well, you get the idea. My broken brain thinks I should have spares if things break, and they never do. Anyway, thanks again, so on and so forth. And I was like, holy crap, I can relate to this big time, because I, up until recently, was doing the same exact thing. I would buy multiples of everything, devices, systems, because in my head, I had this stupid notion that what if this breaks? And it could be just any device. It could be like a video game system, a controller, just random things, right? What if this breaks? I need to have a backup just in case, if I can't fix it or whatever. It was crazy, dude. Just collecting dust. So that's what I want to talk about in this video is OCD, addictions, those kind of behaviors that maybe a lot of us are dealing with gaming. Retro gaming, current gen gaming, doesn't really matter, A lot of us have these weird little things, OCD. I'm sure in my personal life, I have certain things, not to get deep into anything, but I have these weird things with parallel lines and my comfort zones, not to get deep into that. I want to keep this gaming related, but yeah, so that's kind of what I want to talk about. I think with addictions, some people, I've talked about this before with hoarding. If you came to my house and you looked at the stuff I have, do I have collections? Sure, I do. But I don't have a hoard. I don't have a treasure trove, right? Some people collect. I used to collect. I remember I had this notion at one point, because I love the Nintendo 64. I'm going to collect the entire US library of Nintendo 64 games. And at one point, and this was probably, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years ago when I gave up on it, I had -3 games from the library. And the 3 games I didn't have were not expensive games. They were just sports titles. I had all the most expensive games. I had all the rarest titles. Did I want to play any of that crap? No, not at all. It's a waste of space. It didn't bring joy. At some point, it was why do I have this? I don't care about any of these freaking games. Was it something to be proud of? It wasn't an accomplishment. Oh, I bought something. To me, buying something's not an accomplishment. It's not something to be proud of in my eyes, right? So I stopped that nonsense. Buying things is not something in my eyes. Collecting is to be proud of. Is it something to enjoy? If you get enjoyment out of it, sure, why not? So I got out of that. I'm I'm not collecting just for the purpose of collecting. Now, I still do have physical cartridges, but just handfuls of games. Stuff that I actually love. Not buttloads of games collecting dust just for the sole purpose of pointing at it and being yeah, I own that. So I changed that, and I'm happy with that. And same thing with other systems. I'm not I try not to have a back catalog of games. I look at it as a pile of shame. I feel shame if I buy a game and I don't play it. If it just sits there. If it's a new release game, And it still happens on occasion. If I buy it and it doesn't get unwrapped and it just sits there, and a month goes by, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, 3 months go by, why the hell did I buy it? I feel shame. That's not something to be happy about. What was the point? So I've tried to get better with those kind of things, right? I don't hoard. Some people hoard. What's the end goal? I don't know. Some people may be able to have a reason behind it. Is it a problem? Some people it may be. Some people may be hiding that it's a problem. Some people it may not be a problem. If it has like a negative impact on your life, then it can be a problem, right? One of the other big issues that I want to talk on real quick is video game addiction. I know I've like said in videos in the past, like, oh man, I'm addicted to this game, or like, oh, like it's hard to find a game that I get addicted to. Like when I say that, I think I mean just like a game that I look forward to playing or I want to complete. Now, in my life, there have been games where I've been like hooked on, probably with an unhealthy obsession, where it's like I can't get it out of my mind. Like I would go to work, I'm constantly thinking about it. Maybe I've neglected something here and there, or I'm overthinking about it, and I'm focused on that instead of something else. I think that's a bad thing, if you're overthinking about it. It's not bad to, like, throughout the day, you're like, man, I can't wait to play this game, or, whatever. But if it consumes you, sure, that could be a bad thing. It reminded me of a friend that I had years back that I introduced him to Final Fantasy 11, and he kept calling off of work, and he was getting written up. And there was like a point system they had. If you called off too much, you would get written up, and then, or if you were late too much, you would get written up. You had so many points you could get. And he kept saying something about him having an addictive personality, and he was a perfectionist. And there was a time I had time off of work, and he called me and was like, hey, what are you up to? And he was saying something about how he wanted to help with the summoner quest on Final Fantasy 11. I don't remember what all that entailed, because it's been some years, but I was like, yeah, I don't really have much going on today. Like, if you need help with that, I can help you. And I was like, oh, you're off? And he's like, yeah. It turned out he called off of work and he got in trouble. And he was like, oh, I know how to play the system, but he kept getting in trouble. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. So those are the kind of things, like, if you can't balance, like, your life, if the things you're doing with video games and your addiction to them causes, like, problems with your life, your responsibilities, your work, your relationships, your health. And I've seen it, like, people, like, they just give up on things because of these addictions. That's bad, man. If you can balance things, then, nobody can complain. People, they like wind up neglecting their kids because of these addictions. I've seen it in the news. It's not a laughing matter. It's kind of ridiculous, If you can balance things and take care of your responsibilities and still, have your fun, yeah, take care of business, right? Video games, for a lot of people, it's a form of escape, to get away from everyday life, to escape reality just for a moment, to not take things too seriously, though you can take video games seriously. Some people, they do look at it as serious, like, hey, I got a certain goal I need to get to, I need to beat this game, whatever. You could take it serious, not too serious. Some people take things way too serious. They allow them to control their lives. And that's what I'm kind of talking about, as long as it doesn't control you. And I feel like with certain aspects, it can't just be video games, it could be anything. But for me, it's not an attack on anybody. It's not personal. Maybe you could relate to some of these things. But for me, it's like with collecting, with the irrational behaviors, it's like I can't let this stuff control me, right? So there's been times where it's like, let's take a step back. Like, what was the reason for collecting some of the things that I collected? The Nintendo 64 collection that I had at one point. What was the purpose of it? It wasn't like I was going around bragging that I had a Nintendo 64 collection. Wasn't showing it off to anybody. I was just sitting there, like, sifting through it and looking at it. Like, it served no purpose in reality. I didn't expect it to go up in value and to sell it one day. I wasn't going to pass it down to my kids. I really don't think, like, collecting games passed down to kids makes any damn sense. I really don't. Like, I mean, I wasn't going to open up a Nintendo 64 museum. Makes no damn sense to me. So it was like, it's taking up space, makes no damn sense. Let me stop that behavior. If you're into that kind of stuff, it's fine. It's just me personally, right? And then the other thing with, like, multiples of systems in case they break down. I mean, I would do that with controllers too. Maybe that's not so irrational. Like, oh, let me have a spare controller. That kind of makes sense. Maybe that's not irrational or obsessive, but consoles, yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is. So it's like, as long as these things don't control you and cause, negative impacts on your life, it's fine, right? But that can go for anything. Anything. It's not just video games, but that's just what I wanted to talk about. Like I said, this was kind of came to my mind because of this email conversation I had that just kind of, like, I could relate to, and I know some people could relate to as well. So yeah, share your comments, your thoughts down below. Appreciate you guys. Bye. Maybe we'll talk about the aliens next.